When my son died, I learned he left me $30 million in a Malibu villa. That same night, my daughter-in-law threw my bags into the basement and said coldly, "Now you live here." I just smiled. She had no idea she would pay for her cruelty with everything she stole. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. They say you never forget the day you bury your child. They're right. July 12th, 2025, the day I lowered my only son Owen into the ground at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. 67 years on this earth, 42 years as a lawyer, 5 years as founder of one of LA's most respected law firms, and nothing prepared me for that moment. The cancer took him in 6 months. Pancreatic, the brutal kind that doesn't negotiate or offer extensions. I watched my 39-year-old son waste away from a strong corporate attorney who could argue a case for 8 hours straight, to a shadow who could barely lift his head from the pillow. The July heat was oppressive that morning, the kind of dry Los Angeles heat that makes your throat ache. About 40 people came to the funeral. Colleagues from Preston and Associates, where he worked as a senior partner, neighbors from the Bel Air house, a few college friends he'd managed to keep in touch with over the years, and Emily, my daughter-in-law, my son's wife of 5 years. She stood beside me at the graveside in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Designer label, perfectly tailored, her makeup was flawless, not a single tear track in sight. That should have been my first warning, but grief makes you generous with your assumptions. Maybe she'd cried herself out already, I thought. Maybe she was in shock, processing in her own way. Then I noticed her phone. She kept glancing at it during my eulogy. Her thumbs moved across the screen while I barely held it together, talking about Owen's love for vintage cars and terrible jokes. After they lowered the casket, people offered condolences. Empty words, mostly. Emily played her part beautifully, accepting hugs, dabbing at dry eyes, managing a trembling voice. I almost believed it. Then I heard her on the phone as people were leaving. I'd stepped away to splash water on my face. Emily was 20 feet away, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, today," she said. Her tone was light, almost excited. "Finally free." Finally free. Those words hit harder than any eulogy. I stood there, water dripping from my hands, staring at her back. She laughed, actually laughed, at something the person said. I didn't confront her, not at my son's funeral. Instead, I dried my hands and walked back to Owen's grave. The ride to the house was silent. Emily drove. My hands were shaking. The Bel Air house had been Owen's pride. 4 bedrooms, Spanish colonial, canyon view. He'd bought it 5 years ago when he made partner. Or so I'd thought. We pulled into the driveway. Emily grabbed her purse and headed inside without waiting. I followed slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years. Inside, she was already pouring wine from Owen's expensive collection. "Long day," she said, not looking at me. "Yes." She took a long drink, then turned. The mask of grief was gone, replaced by something cold. "Gordon, we need to talk about living arrangements." "Living arrangements? This is my house now." Matter of fact, like commenting on weather. "Owen left it to me. Everything goes to the surviving spouse. That's how it works." A lifetime of legal practice has taught me to control my expression. I used every bit of that training. "I see. I think it's best if you stay in the basement for now." She set down her glass with a click. "Just until you figure out your next steps. Find a place, maybe a retirement community." The basement. She wanted me in the basement. "The basement," I repeated. "Yes. There's a bathroom down there, a sitting area. It's adequate. You understand, don't you? I need space to process my grief." She said that last part with a straight face. I could have told her then, could have explained she was making a massive mistake. Instead, I smiled, just a small one. "Of course, Emily. Whatever you think is best." Surprise flickered in her eyes. She'd expected a fight. "Good. Move your things down tonight. I'll leave food at the top of the stairs. We'll keep this simple." Like I was a pet to be fed and kept out of sight. "Simple," I echoed. I gathered my belongings and carried them to the basement. Owen had set it up as a game room. Pool table, large TV, leather couch. The stairs creaked. Emily's footsteps moved above me, walking freely through what she believed was her kingdom. I set my suitcase on the couch. The basement smelled of dust and old carpet. A single window showed the darkening Los Angeles sky. Finally alone, I let myself cry. Not loud sobs, I've never been that kind of man. Just silent tears while I thought about Owen, my brilliant, too trusting son who'd married a woman I'd had doubts about from the start. I'd kept those doubts to myself. It was his life, his choice. Emily had played the loving wife well enough that I'd convinced myself I was just being overprotective. But that phone call, those 2 words, finally free. After a while, I wiped my face and stood. Enough grief, enough weakness. Emily thought she'd won, thought she'd maneuvered me into a corner, pushed me into this basement like unwanted furniture. She had no idea what she'd just done. I looked up at the ceiling, toward her moving around upstairs. My lips curved into a smile that had nothing warm in it. "Emily," I said quietly, "you just made a very big mistake." That first night in the basement was long. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to Emily's footsteps. Around midnight, I heard the front door. Male voices, laughter. Music started playing upstairs. She had someone over. The night of my son's funeral. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but memories flooded back. The last 3 months of Owen's life, playing on repeat. It started in April when Owen called about the diagnosis. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He'd ignored stomach pains for weeks because of a big case at work. By the time he saw a doctor, it had spread. "How long?" I'd asked. 6 months, maybe. "Dad, His voice cracked. "I'm scared." I'd driven to the house that same day. Emily greeted me perfectly composed. "Oh, Gordon, isn't it terrible?" "I'm devastated." But over the next months, I watched her devastation manifest in interesting ways. Owen wanted to try experimental treatment at Cedars-Sinai. Expensive. Insurance wouldn't cover it all. He asked Emily about using their savings. I was there that day, helping Owen sort medical papers. I heard them arguing in the bedroom. $200,000, Owen. For what? So you can be sick for a few more months? It might work. It won't work. The doctors said it's palliative at best. We need to be realistic about finances. Finances? Owen's voice rose, weak but angry. "Emily, I'm dying, and you're worried about money? Someone has to be practical." I stood in the hallway, frozen. When Emily emerged, she saw me and immediately rearranged her face. "Poor Owen," she said, loud enough for him to hear. "The medication makes him so emotional." Then there were the important meetings. Owen needed someone with him constantly by June. The pain was bad. He could barely move some days. I offered to stay full-time, but he insisted Emily could handle it, except Emily was rarely there. "Lunch with a friend," she'd say, grabbing her purse. "Owen's sleeping anyway." Or, "Yoga class. Self-care is important during difficult times." Or, "Meeting with the estate planner. Someone has to think about the future." I started coming over more often, usually finding Owen alone, struggling to reach the bathroom or his medication. He never complained about Emily. Even at the end, he protected her. The memory that haunted me most happened 3 weeks before Owen died. I'd arrived early one afternoon, let myself in with my key. I heard Emily's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, laughing. "No, he's completely out of it on morphine," she was saying. "Honestly, it's like living with a ghost. Can't wait until this is finally over." I stood in the hallway, listening. The lawyer said everything goes to the spouse automatically. The house, his portion of the law firm, all of it. His father gets nothing unless Owen specifically put him in the will, which he didn't. More laughter. I know, right? Finally, 5 years of playing dutiful wife is about to pay off. I'd wanted to burst in to confront her, but from the bedroom I heard Owen making a sound, a low moan of pain. I walked past Emily, who immediately ended her call and plastered on concern. "Gordon, I didn't hear you come in. I was just calling the pharmacy about Owen's refill." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and went to my son. Owen was curled on his side, face gray, soaked in sweat. I helped him to the bathroom, changed his sheets, got him water and medication. Emily stayed in the living room the whole time, presumably back on her phone. All of this played through my mind as I lay in that basement. I'd stayed silent during Owen's illness because I didn't want to add stress to his final days. Didn't want him to know his wife was counting down the hours until he died. Now, listening to Emily entertaining someone upstairs on the night we'd buried him, I realized my silence had been a mistake. I sat up as the sky outside began to lighten. The music upstairs had stopped around 3 a.m. The male visitor had apparently left, but the damage was done. Not to Emily, to my patients. I pulled out my phone and found the name I needed, Sheila Connors. She was a notary I'd worked with for years, thorough and discreet. I sent her a text. Need to discuss Owen's estate documents. Urgent. Can we meet today? Her response came within minutes. Of course. My office at 10 a.m. Perfect. Thank you. I set the phone down and looked around the basement Emily thought was my new permanent residence. She thought she'd imprisoned me. Thought she'd put me in my place. What she'd actually done was give me time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to remember every single thing she'd done to my son in his final months. Emily wanted to play games with Owen's estate? Fine. I'd taught corporate law for 20 years before I retired. I'd built Preston and Associates from nothing. I knew exactly how the law worked. Every loophole, every protection, every clause. I stood and walked to the small bathroom. In the mirror, I looked at myself. 67 years old. Gray hair, lined face. Emily probably saw a weak old man she could push around. She was about to learn otherwise. First step, meeting with Sheila. Owen had changed his will 2 months before he died. I knew because he'd called me, barely able to speak. Dad, he'd whispered, I need you to know. I changed things in case Emily... Shh, don't worry about that now. Rest. Promise me you'll make sure things are done right. I promise, son, I promise. Now it was time to keep that promise. I heard Emily's alarm go off upstairs, a pop song blaring from her phone. Her footsteps crossed the bedroom, then into the master bathroom. The shower started. I smiled to myself. Enjoy your morning routine, Emily. Enjoy thinking you've won. Enjoy this house you believe is yours, because very soon you're going to learn what happens when you cross a Preston. My son might have been too kind to see through you, but I'm not my son, and your reckoning is coming. By morning, I'd made my decision. No more passive grief. It was time to start gathering information. I waited until I heard Emily's car pull out, off to another important meeting, no doubt. Then I climbed the basement stairs, showered quickly, and dressed in one of my decent suits. If Emily thought I was just going to sit in that basement and rot, she was in for a surprise. My first stop was Bank of America on Wilshire Boulevard. I had old accounts there that needed closing, legitimate business. But I was also hoping for something else. Information. The branch was quiet at 10 a.m. I approached the customer service desk. Good morning, I need to close some accounts. The woman behind the desk looked up and her expression shifted to recognition. Sandra Wells, according to her nameplate. She'd worked with Owen's accounts before. Mr. Preston? She stood, reaching across to shake my hand. I'm so very sorry for your loss. Owen was such a wonderful man. Thank you, Sandra. She gestured for me to sit and pulled up my information. As she processed the paperwork, she kept glancing at me with that expression people get when they're debating whether to say something. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Preston, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but... She lowered her voice. I'm glad those large transfers Mrs. Preston made went to something important. Treatment expenses, I assume. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Large transfers. Yes, I said carefully. It was a difficult time financially. Of course, she nodded sympathetically. I noticed them going through over the last 2 months, substantial amounts. I'm just glad Owen had the resources to try everything possible. How substantial are we talking? She glanced at her screen. The largest was around 200,000. There were several smaller ones, too, all from the joint account Owen and Mrs. Preston shared. 200,000, and several more transfers. Owen had told me about wanting experimental treatment, about Emily's resistance. What he hadn't told me, what he probably hadn't known, was that Emily was apparently moving money out while he was too sick to notice. Well, I said, maintaining my composure, at least it went to a good cause. Sandra smiled sadly and continued processing my closures. We finished the paperwork, and I thanked her. Outside, standing in the Los Angeles sunshine, I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady, but something was burning in my chest. Cold, calculated fury. I found Harold Silverman in my contacts. Harold had been my partner at Preston and Associates for over 20 years. He was 58, sharp as they come, and one of the few people I trusted completely. He answered on the second ring. "Gordon, how are you holding up?" "I need a favor, Harold." A quiet one. There was a pause. Harold knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. "What do you need?" "I need you to look into some financial transactions. Emily's been making large transfers from Owen's accounts. I want to know where that money went." "How large?" "At least 200,000 that I know of. Probably more." I heard Harold's sharp intake of breath. "When?" "Last 2 months, while Owen was dying." "That's—" He stopped himself. "I'll look into it. Discreetly. Give me a couple of days." "Thank you, Harold." "Gordon?" His voice was careful. "What are you planning?" I looked up at the clear blue sky, thought about Emily's cold dismissal at the funeral, about her banishing me to that basement. "Justice," I said simply. "I'm planning justice." After we hung up, I stood there thinking through my next steps. The meeting with Sheila Connors, the notary, was scheduled for tomorrow. That would tell me about Owen's will. But this thing with the money, this was theft. Emily helping herself to Owen's resources while he lay dying. I thought about that phone call I'd overheard during Owen's final weeks. Emily laughing, saying everything would go to the spouse automatically. She'd been so confident. What she didn't know was that Owen wasn't the only Preston who understood the law. I'd built a career on understanding contracts, estates, corporate structures. I'd taught Owen everything he knew, and I was about to teach Emily a very different kind of lesson. I walked back to my car, a modest sedan. Emily probably assumed I was broke, dependent on her goodwill. She had no idea I'd been putting money away for decades, that I owned the firm where Owen had worked. But I wasn't ready to show my hand yet, not until I had all the pieces in place. The drive back to Bel Air took 20 minutes. I parked down the street, waiting until I saw Emily's car in the driveway. Then I headed straight for the basement door around the side. She'd made it clear I wasn't to use the front entrance anymore. Fine. I could play the obedient old man for a while longer. Down in the basement, I sat on the couch and pulled out a legal pad from one of Owen's old boxes. Time to start making lists. What I knew, Emily had moved at least $200,000, probably more. She'd done it while Owen was too sick to monitor. She had a male visitor the night of the funeral. She was confident everything would pass to her automatically. What I needed to know, where did the money go? Who was the man? What exactly did Owen's final will say? I was halfway through my notes when I heard footsteps on the stairs. The door opened. "Gordon?" Emily's voice was sharp. "Were you out today?" I looked up calmly. "I had some banking to take care of. Account closures." She descended a few steps. Suspicious. "What accounts?" "My personal accounts. They needed updating after recent events." She studied me for a long moment. Was I a threat? Did I know something? Or was I just a grieving old man? Finally, she seemed to decide I was harmless. "Fine. Just remember, this is my house now. I need to know when you're coming and going." "Of course, Emily." I gave her my most placid smile. "Whatever you say." She turned and went back upstairs. I heard the door lock click. I looked down at my legal pad and added one more line. "Emily thinks she's in control. Use that." The game was just beginning, and she had no idea who she was playing against. A week in that basement. 7 days of Emily's contempt. She'd established a routine quickly. Every morning around 8, she'd open the door at the top of the stairs and leave a paper bag with food. Breakfast, a bagel, maybe some fruit. Nothing that required preparation. Lunch was similar. Dinner sometimes didn't come at all. She allowed me upstairs twice a day. Once in the morning for a shower, she'd set a timer, giving me exactly 15 minutes. And once in the evening for the bathroom. The rest of the time, I was expected to stay below. Out of sight, out of mind. I could hear her moving around above me. The click of her heels on hardwood. Her voice on phone calls. She laughed a lot. Light, carefree laughter that grated against everything I felt. On the fourth night, I heard something different. It was around 9 p.m. I was reading one of Owen's old law textbooks when I heard the front door open. Male voices. Then music started playing upstairs, loud, bass-heavy, throbbing through the ceiling. I set down the book and listened. Emily's laugh, high and bright. A man's deeper chuckle. The clink of glasses. They were having a party. Not even 2 weeks after burying Owen. I stood and moved to the stairs, pressing my ear against the door. "So glad you could make it," Emily was saying. "Wouldn't miss it." An unfamiliar male voice. "Besides, you said you had something to celebrate?" "Freedom, Marcus. I'm celebrating freedom." Marcus. I filed the name away. They moved away, their voices fading. The party went on for hours. Around midnight, most of the guests left. I heard goodbyes, cars starting. But one voice remained. A different man, his tone lower, more intimate. "Finally alone," Emily said. "I thought they'd never leave." "Your friends are persistent." The man sounded amused. They were moving through the house. I heard footsteps on the stairs to the second floor, heading toward the master bedroom. Then Emily's voice, clear enough that I caught every word. "Don't worry about the old man. He's down in the basement. Can't hear a thing down there." "When are you getting rid of him?" the man asked. "Soon, Zav. Soon as I get the paperwork sorted." Zav. Xavier. Another name for my list. "What's the holdup?" "Estate stuff. It's complicated, but once it's done, he's out. Probably find him some cheap retirement home." They laughed together, and then a door closed. The master bedroom. I stood at the bottom of those basement stairs for a long time, staring up at the locked door. My son had been in the ground for less than 2 weeks. His bed now held his widow and her lover. The rage that filled me then was cold, surgical, the kind of anger that calcifies into something harder, into resolve. I went back to the couch and pulled out my phone. Harold had said he'd need a couple of days. It had been 4. I sent him a text. "Any progress?" The response came within minutes. "Yes. Can you meet tomorrow? 10 a.m. at the office?" "I'll be there." The next morning, I waited until I heard Emily's car leave. She'd come down around 8 with breakfast without making eye contact. Then she'd left. I gave it another 10 minutes, then headed upstairs. Quick shower, and I was out. Preston and Associates occupied 3 floors of a building on Figueroa Street, downtown. I'd founded it 30 years ago. We'd built it into one of the most respected corporate law firms in Los Angeles. The receptionist, Maria, looked surprised. "Mr. Preston, I didn't know you were coming in." "Unscheduled visit, Maria. Is Harold available?" "He's expecting you. Go right up." Harold's office was on the top floor, corner view. He stood when I entered. "Gordon, you look thin." "I'm fine." "What did you find?" He gestured to the chair and pulled out a folder. "You're not going to like this." I assumed as much. Harold opened the folder and spread several bank statements across his desk. Over the last 3 months, Emily made transfers from the joint account she shared with Owen. Total amount, approximately $450,000. $450,000, twice what Sandra had mentioned. Where did it go? Several places. $100,000 to a personal account in her maiden name, Emily Harrison. Another $100,000 to a securities account, also in her name. The rest was withdrawn as cashier's checks or transferred to accounts we haven't fully traced yet. So she was systematically moving money out while Owen was dying. Yes. Harold's expression was grim. The transfers started accelerating about 6 weeks before Owen passed. The final one was 3 days before his death. 3 days before he died, she was still stealing from him. Can we prove this was unauthorized? That's the tricky part. It was a joint account. Technically, she had legal access, but Harold pulled out another document. I pulled the account history. For 5 years of their marriage, Emily never touched that account. Every transaction was Owen's. Then suddenly, in his final months, when he was on heavy medication and could barely function, she starts moving massive amounts. That's a pattern. Exactly. Pattern of financial exploitation of an incapacitated person. Not yet, I interrupted. I want all the information first. Everything. Then we decide. Harold studied me. Gordon, what exactly are you planning here? I thought about Emily's laugh at the funeral, about her dismissive command, about her in Owen's bed with another man, about her stealing nearly $500,000 while my son lay dying. I'm planning to make sure my son's memory is protected, I said quietly, and I'm planning to make sure Emily gets exactly what she deserves. Harold nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Everything you can find. Financial records, property records. I want to know every asset Owen had. I should tell you something. Owen came to see me about 2 months before he died. He wanted to update his will. I felt something shift in my chest. Update it how? He didn't give me all the details. Said he'd handle it through Sheila Connors directly. But he did say... Harold paused. He said he'd realized some things about Emily, that he wanted to make sure you were taken care of. My son. Even at the end, even betrayed, he'd been thinking about protecting me. Thank you, Harold. Keep digging. I'll reach out to Sheila today. I left the office and sat in my car looking up at the building. Preston and Associates. My legacy. Owen's legacy. Emily thought she'd inherited everything. Thought she'd won. She had no idea the game had just begun, and I had every intention of winning. 3 days after my meeting with Harold, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Gordon, it's Sheila Connors. I have Owen's estate documents ready for review. Can you come by my office this afternoon? Sheila Connors was the notary who'd worked with Owen on his legal affairs for years. Professional, discreet, exactly the kind of person you'd trust with something important. I'll be there at 2, I said. Emily had left that morning for what she called a spa day, which I suspected meant shopping with money she'd stolen from my son. Perfect timing. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and drove downtown to Sheila's office in Century City. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where serious legal work happened. Sheila's office was on the 15th floor. Her assistant showed me in immediately. Gordon. Sheila stood and came around her desk to shake my hand. She was 52, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses, and a reputation for thoroughness that had made her one of the most sought-after notaries in Los Angeles. I'm so sorry about Owen. He was a wonderful young man. Thank you, Sheila. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Between us lay a thick folder marked Preston Owen, Estate Documents. I'm going to be direct with you, Sheila said, settling into her chair. Owen came to see me 8 weeks before he passed. He wanted to make significant changes to his will. 8 weeks. That would have been early May, when Owen was already quite sick but still lucid enough to make legal decisions. What kind of changes? Sheila opened the folder and pulled out several documents. His previous will, executed 5 years ago when he married Emily, left everything to her. Standard spousal arrangement. I nodded. That's what I'd assumed. But in May, he came to me and said he wanted to revise everything. Sheila's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught something in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or understanding. He was very specific about his wishes. She slid the first document across to me. Under California law, a spouse is entitled to a minimum of their community property share unless they've signed a prenuptial agreement. Owen and Emily didn't have a prenup, so legally she's entitled to at least $100,000 from the estate. $100,000, I repeated. That's what Owen left her. Exactly $100,000. The legal minimum. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. My son. Even dying, he'd been thinking clearly. And the rest? Sheila pulled out another document. This one was longer, more detailed. The bulk of Owen's estate goes to you. That includes approximately $30 million in investments and securities that he'd accumulated over his career. 30 million, the number was staggering. I'd known Owen was doing well. He was a senior partner at Preston and Associates, one of our top earners. But 30 million? He was very good at his job, Sheila said quietly, reading my expression. And he lived modestly. Most of his income went straight into investments. What else? The Malibu property. $8 million valuation. Also to you. The villa in Malibu. Owen had bought it 3 years ago as an investment. I'd visited once. It was stunning. Right on the beach. With views that made you forget your troubles. And his shares in Preston and Associates? Sheila continued. 20% of the firm. Also yours. I sat back in the chair, trying to process it all. Owen had essentially left me everything. Everything except the legal minimum for Emily. There's more, Sheila said. She pulled out a handwritten note, sealed in plastic. Owen asked me to give this to you after his passing. He wanted you to understand his reasoning. She handed me the note. Owen's handwriting, unmistakable even through the protective sleeve. Dad, it read, I know this will surprise you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, but I didn't want to burden you while I was still fighting. The truth is, I figured out what Emily really wanted about 6 months ago. She thought I didn't notice the changes, her distance, her sudden interest in our finances, the way she looked at me like I was already gone. I hired a private investigator in March, found out about the boyfriend, found out she'd been planning this for a while. I changed the will because you deserve this more than she does. You've always been there for me. She never was. Make sure she doesn't get what she doesn't deserve. I love you. Owen. I read it twice. 3 times. My hands were steady, but something was breaking apart inside my chest. My son had known. He'd known what Emily was, and he'd protected me, even from his deathbed. Gordon? Sheila's voice was gentle. I looked up. He knew. Yes. He told me as much when he came to change the will. He was very clear-headed about it, very methodical. We had 2 witnesses present, both doctors, who can testify to his mental competency, if needed. If needed? I suspect Emily will try to challenge this. The change is too dramatic for her to accept quietly. Sheila leaned forward. But Gordon, I want you to know. This will is ironclad. Owen made sure of that. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he had the medical and legal documentation to prove it. I carefully folded Owen's note and slipped it into my jacket pocket. When does the will go into probate? It's already filed. The court date is set for 3 weeks from now. Emily will be formally notified next week. 3 weeks. That gave me time to prepare for her reaction. Thank you, Sheila, for everything. She nodded. Owen was a good man. He deserved better than what she gave him. I stood to leave, then paused. Sheila, was there anything else in his estate? Any other properties or assets? She consulted her file. Just his personal effects, his car, a 2023 Porsche 911, by the way, and his life insurance policy. $2 million, also designated to you. $32 million in total, plus the Malibu property, plus ownership shares in one of LA's most successful law firms. Emily thought she'd won the lottery by marrying Owen. She thought his death meant she'd finally cash in. She had no idea what was coming. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time after leaving Sheila's office, staring at nothing. $30 million. The Malibu villa. 20% of Preston and Associates. Owen had left me everything that mattered, and he'd done it deliberately, methodically, with full knowledge of what Emily was. But there was one piece of information Sheila had mentioned that stuck in my mind, something that needed clarification. I pulled out my phone and called Harold. Gordon, how did the meeting with Sheila go? Enlightening. Harold, I need you to pull the property records for the Bel Air house, Owen's house, where Emily and I are currently residing? The one on Stradella Road? That's the one. I heard typing in the background. Harold had always been fast with research. Give me a minute. Okay, pulling it up now. Property records for 2847 Stradella Road, Bel Air. Purchased in 2020 for $12 million. Ownership structure is... He went quiet. Harold? Gordon. His voice changed. The property is in your name. I'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a strange sensation through me. Explain. The deed shows you as primary owner. There's a notation here about a gift transfer to Owen, but it was never completed. Legally, you own the house. Owen was paying you rent. Looks like $1 a year, symbolic. $1 a year. The standard arrangement for family property transfers that maintain legal ownership for tax purposes. So when Emily told me to move to the basement, she was ordering the actual property owner to live in his own basement. Harold's voice had taken on a grim satisfaction. Gordon, she's been living in your house, driving Owen's car, spending what she thinks is her money, but none of it belongs to her. I thought about Emily's smug expression when she'd banished me downstairs, her casual cruelty, her absolute certainty that she'd won. Harold, tell me something. Can she claim any rights to the house? Community property laws, spousal rights, anything? More typing. Let me check. No. The property was yours before Owen's marriage. It never transferred to him, so it was never part of the marital estate. Emily has zero claim to it. Technically, she's been residing there as Owen's guest. Now that Owen's gone, he paused. Now she's just a squatter. A squatter. In my house, treating me like an unwanted burden while she lived in luxury that was never hers. How quickly can we evict her? given that she has no legal claim and you're the owner? Very quickly. But Gordon, I'd recommend... I know what you're going to say. Wait. Let her dig herself deeper. Let her feel safe and confident. I watched a young couple walk past my car, laughing about something. Normal people with normal problems. But Harold, I want everything ready. Every document, every legal maneuver. When I move, I want it to be final. Understood. I'll prepare everything. What about the accounts she's been draining? Those too. As executor of Owen's estate, I can freeze them, correct? Absolutely. In fact, you should. It's standard procedure to freeze joint accounts during probate. I smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Do it. Today. Gordon, she's going to react badly to this. I'm counting on it. I started the car. The more she flails, the more she reveals. Let her show everyone exactly who she is. After I hung up with Harold, I sat for another moment, thinking through the implications. Emily thought she was playing chess. She thought she'd maneuvered herself into winning position. Widow of a wealthy man, about to inherit everything, free to live however she wanted. What she didn't realize was that she wasn't playing chess at all. She was playing checkers on a chessboard, and she didn't even know the rules of the game. I pulled out Owen's note and read it one more time. Make sure she doesn't get what she doesn't deserve. I will, son, I said quietly. I promise you, I will. The drive back to Bel Air took 40 minutes. I parked down the street again and walked to the side entrance. My entrance now, though Emily didn't know it yet. Down in the basement, I pulled out my legal pad and started making notes. Real notes this time, with numbers and dates and names. Timeline. Today, July 25th. Discovered the full scope of Owen's will and the house ownership. Next week, Emily will be notified of the will's contents. 3 weeks from now, court hearing on the estate. 30 days maximum. Emily's eviction from my property. Financial accounting. Emily stole $450,000 from Owen's accounts. Emily sold $80,000 in jewelry, engagement ring and earrings. Emily to receive from estate $100,000, legal minimum. My inheritance $30 million, plus a Malibu villa $8 million, plus 20% of Preston and Associates, plus $2 million life insurance assets. I control the Bel Air house, my property. Preston and Associates, I founded it, now own even more. Owen's Porsche, part of estate. All of Owen's investments and accounts, Emily's actual position. Nothing. She has nothing except what she stole and what she'll get in the settlement. And if I could prove the theft was exploitation of an incapacitated person, she might not even keep that. I heard footsteps above. Emily was back from her spa day, laughing on the phone with someone, probably Xavier, her personal trainer boyfriend. Let her laugh. Let her enjoy these last few weeks of thinking she'd won, because very soon she was going to learn a lesson about consequences that she'd never forget. I looked up at the ceiling, toward where she was walking around in what she thought was her house. Enjoy it while it lasts, Emily, I murmured. The clock is ticking. I returned to the basement that evening with a clarity I hadn't felt since Owen's diagnosis. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But now it had transformed into something sharper. Purpose. From my burner phone, yes, I'd bought one specifically for this, paid cash at a convenience store. I called Harold. It's time, I said. Start the process. All of it? Everything we discussed. First, freeze all joint accounts under my authority as executor. Second, prepare eviction paperwork for Emily and her guest. Third, I need a private investigator. Someone good. I know someone, Marcus Reed, former LAPD financial crimes detective, now runs his own firm. Discreet, thorough. Perfect. Have him dig into Xavier Torres. Who he is, what he does, where his money comes from. And Harold, I want to know when he moved into my house. Your house, Harold repeated, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. I'll handle it. One more thing. File the eviction notice, but don't serve it yet. I want everything lined up perfectly before we move. Understood. Gordon, are you sure you want to stay in that basement while we do this? I looked around at the space Emily had relegated me to. The old couch, the boxes of Owen's childhood things, the single small window. Absolutely. She thinks she's won. Let her keep thinking that. After we hung up, I sat in the dim light and thought about timing. Emily would discover the frozen accounts within days. She used that credit card constantly. When she did, she'd panic. She'd demand answers. And I'd play the confused, powerless old man perfectly. The key to any good legal strategy is patience. Let your opponent make the first moves. Let them show their hand while you keep yours hidden. 2 days later, it happened exactly as I'd predicted. I was reading in the basement when I heard footsteps thundering down the stairs. The door flew open. "What did you do?" Emily stood at the top of the stairs, her face flushed with anger. She'd tried to dress nicely, probably for another lunch date with Xavier, but her fury destroyed any pretense of composure. I looked up calmly from my book. "I'm sorry?" "Don't play stupid with me. My credit card was declined. I called the bank, and they said the account is frozen." "Frozen?" "Oh." I set down my book slowly. "Yes, that's standard procedure, Emily. When someone passes away, their accounts get frozen during probate. It's the law." "You did this." "I'm the executor of Owen's estate. It's my legal obligation to secure all assets until the will is processed. Surely you understand that." Her hands clenched into fists. "I need access to that money. I have bills to pay, expenses." "Then you should have saved some of the $450,000 you transferred out of Owen's accounts while he was dying." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the systematic theft of funds from a terminally ill person's bank account. The transfers that started in April and continued right up until 3 days before Owen's death." I kept my voice even, almost friendly. "Did you think no one would notice? That was for medical expenses." "Medical expenses that went to accounts in your maiden name? Medical expenses that bought securities in your personal portfolio?" I smiled. "Emily, I'm a lawyer. I taught corporate law for 20 years. Don't insult my intelligence." She stared at me, and I watched the calculations running behind her eyes. Then her expression shifted to something desperate, pleading. "Gordon, please, you have to understand. Owen wanted me to be taken care of. He wouldn't want you to freeze me out like this." "Actually, Owen's wishes are quite clear. They're documented in his revised will, which you'll be receiving formal notice of shortly." "Revised will?" Her voice went up an octave. "What revised will?" "The one he executed 8 weeks before his death. The one that supersedes the previous version." I picked up my book again. "But I'm sure your lawyer will explain all that to you. You are planning to get a lawyer, aren't you?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "This is ridiculous. Everything was fine until you showed up and started—" "Started what? Living in my own house?" "Owen's house. Check the deed, Emily." I met her eyes directly. "Check who actually owns this property. You might be surprised." I watched the implications sink in, the uncertainty flickering across her face. "You're lying." "Am I? Feel free to verify. The Los Angeles County Assessor's Office keeps excellent records." She turned and stormed back up the stairs. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I waited until her footsteps faded, then pulled out my phone and texted Harold. "She knows about the accounts. Clock is ticking." His response came immediately. "Reed found something on Torres. Can you come to the office tomorrow?" "We'll be there at 10 a.m. I allowed myself a small smile. Emily had just made her first major mistake. She'd revealed how much she didn't know. And in a legal battle, information asymmetry is everything. That night, I heard her on the phone upstairs. Her voice carried through the heating vents. "I don't care what it costs. I need a lawyer. Yes, estate law. No, I need someone aggressive. Someone who can fight this." Good. Let her spend money she didn't have on a lawyer who wouldn't be able to help her. Every dollar she spent now was a dollar she wouldn't have later. I pulled out my legal pad and updated my timeline. July 26th. Accounts frozen. July 27th. Emily discovers freeze confronts me. July 28th. Meeting with Harold and private investigator. Next steps. Serve eviction notice, timing TBD. Gather evidence of Xavier's presence. Prepare for Emily's legal countermove. Maintain appearance of weakness. The transformation from victim to strategist was complete. Emily had pushed me into this basement thinking she'd broken me. She was about to learn how wrong she'd been. The next morning I left early while Emily was still asleep, or more accurately, while she was sleeping off whatever she and Xavier had been doing the night before. At Preston & Associates, Harold had Marcus Reed waiting in the conference room. Reed was exactly what you'd expect from an ex-cop turned private investigator. Mid-40s, solid build, observant eyes. He stood when I entered. "Mr. Preston, I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." "What did you find on Torres?" Reed opened a folder and spread documents across the table. Xavier Torres, age 29, personal trainer at Elite Fitness in Santa Monica. Charges $200 an hour. How long has he known Emily? 6 months. She hired him in January, when your son was already sick, correct? Yes, just starting chemotherapy. Reed pulled out another document. Torres moved into your Bel Air residence on July 14th, 2 days after your son's funeral. 2 days. She couldn't even wait a week. What else? Torres has a history. 3 years ago, he was involved with another client, a wealthy widow. That relationship ended when her family discovered he'd borrowed $50,000. They threatened legal action, and he paid it back. It's a pattern. Harold leaned forward. He's a con artist. A small-time one, Reed agreed. Not sophisticated. He probably saw Emily as his next mark. Young widow, newly wealthy. Except she's not actually wealthy, is she? Not as wealthy as she thinks, I said. Current situation? Reed flipped to another page. Still employed at Elite Fitness, though his hours have dropped significantly. His bank account shows regular deposits of $200 to $300. Walking around money. Someone supporting him. Emily's been giving him cash from Owen's accounts. Does he know the real situation? Harold asked. I doubt Emily's been honest with him. I looked at Reed. Can you document his presence at the house? Photos, timestamps. Already done. Reed pulled out photographs. Torres entering the house. Torres driving Owen's Porsche. Torres and Emily on the back patio. I've been watching for 3 days. He's there constantly. I studied the photos. Torres was handsome in a generic way. Gym fit, careful hair, expensive casual clothes. Perfect. Keep watching for another week. Document everything. After Reed left, Harold and I sat with coffee. She's going to fight this, Harold said. The will, the eviction, all of it. I'm counting on it. How much will she spend before she realizes she can't win? Depends on the lawyer. If she hires someone ethical, they'll review the case and tell her she doesn't have grounds. But if she finds someone willing to take her money, she'll find someone willing. She's desperate. Harold's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. Brad Collins just filed notice of appearance. He's representing Emily. Collins? I searched my memory. Young guy? Graduated from Southwestern maybe 5 years ago. That's him. Aggressive, hungry, not particularly experienced with estate law. Perfect for Emily. He'll tell her what she wants to hear and bill accordingly. About those jewelry sales, she got $80,000. Collins probably charged $25,000 as a retainer. I did the math. So she's down to $55,000 in cash, running out faster than she realizes. What's your next move? I thought about it. Emily was cornered but didn't know it yet. She was hiring lawyers with money she didn't have to fight a case she couldn't win. We serve the eviction notice next week. Let her hire Collins. Let her feel like she's fighting back. Then we hit her with the eviction and property ownership documents. She'll realize everything at once. That's going to be quite a shock. It's meant to be. I stood and walked to the window. From the 15th floor, I could see across downtown L.A. Somewhere out there was Owen's grave. She spent months watching my son die while stealing his money and sleeping with her boyfriend. She banished me to a basement in my own house. She celebrated his death. I turned back to Harold. She deserves every bit of what's coming. I'll have the papers ready by Monday. I drove back to Bel Air, feeling the pieces falling into place. Emily thought she was preparing for a legal battle over the will. She had no idea the real battle was about to begin. When I arrived, I saw a legal letter stuck in the front door. Emily's lawyer had already sent something. Standard aggressive tactics meant to intimidate. I went around to the basement entrance, content to let Emily find that letter herself. Let her think her lawyer was making progress. In the basement, I updated my notes. Financial scorecard. Emily's stolen money. $450,000. Emily's jewelry sale. $80,000. Emily's legal retainer. $25,000. Emily's current cash. $55,000. Emily's monthly expenses. $15,000 estimate. Timeline, less than 4 months before she's broke. My position, $30 inheritance secured. $8 Malibu villa secured. 20% Preston and Associates owned. $2 life insurance secured. Bel Air house owned outright. Emily's position, 4 months until financial collapse. I set down my pen and listened to the sounds above. Emily was home, probably reading her lawyer's letter, probably feeling confident. She had no idea the floor was about to drop out from under her, and I was going to enjoy every moment of watching her fall. 3 weeks of legal maneuvering. 3 weeks of watching Emily's confidence grow while her bank account shrank. Brad Collins, her lawyer, had filed motion after motion, claims that Owen had been mentally incompetent, demands for psychiatric evaluations of me, all denied. The hearing was set for August 16th. Downtown Los Angeles Superior Court, Department 9, Judge Margaret Chen presiding. I arrived early with Harold. We'd prepared meticulously. Harold carried Owen's medical records, notary documents from Sheila Connors, psychiatric evaluations confirming Owen's competency, and the property deed for the Bel Air house. Emily arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a black dress that probably cost $2,000. Xavier was with her, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. Collins trailed behind, confident. All rise! The Honorable Judge Margaret Chen presiding. Judge Chen was in her late 50s, with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. Please be seated. This is the contested will case, estate of Owen Preston. Mrs. Emily Preston is challenging the revised will. Collins stood. Your Honor, we contend that Owen Preston was not of sound mind when he executed this will. He was heavily medicated and vulnerable to undue influence. Your evidence, Mr. Collins? Collins presented a thin folder. Testimony from Mrs. Preston regarding her husband's mental state. Objection, Your Honor. Harold stood smoothly. We have comprehensive evidence that contradicts Mr. Collins's assertions. Proceed, Mr. Silverman. Harold approached with our briefcase. Your Honor, we have medical evaluations from 2 board-certified psychiatrists who examined Owen Preston 2 weeks before he executed the revised will. Both concluded he was entirely competent. We have notarized statements from the notary, and we have video testimony from the will signing, showing Owen Preston speaking clearly about his wishes. Judge Chen took the documents. Video testimony. Yes, Your Honor. Owen Preston explicitly states on camera that he is of sound mind, that no one pressured him, and that he understands his decisions. I watched Emily's face crack. Judge Chen reviewed the documents. Mr. Collins, do you have evidence to contradict these psychiatric evaluations? Your Honor, we would need time to review. You've had 3 weeks, Mr. Collins. Either you have contradictory evidence or you don't. No, Your Honor. Then I see no basis for your claim. Judge Chen set down the papers. However, there's another matter. Mr. Silverman, you've included property records? Yes, Your Honor. The property at 2847 Stradella Road, Bel Air. Mrs. Preston currently resides there and has claimed it as part of the marital estate. And the issue? The property is owned solely by Gordon Preston. It was purchased in 2015 and gifted to Owen with a retained ownership structure for tax purposes. Owen paid his father $1 per year in rent. The property never transferred to Owen's name, therefore it was never marital property. Judge Chen looked directly at Emily. Mrs. Preston, were you aware of this ownership structure? Emily stood shakily. No. Owen told me it was our house. What Mr. Owen Preston told you and what the legal documentation shows are 2 different things. Judge Chen studied the property records. When she looked up, her expression was severe. Mrs. Preston, do you understand that you've been residing in a property you don't own, without the owner's permission? I thought it was mine. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. Your thoughts don't change legal ownership. Judge Chen turned to me. Mr. Preston, are you seeking eviction? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. On what grounds? She ordered me to live in the basement of my own house, Your Honor. She's been residing there without a lease, without my permission, and with a male companion who has no legal right to the property. Judge Chen's eyebrow rose. You've been living in the basement? For 5 weeks, Your Honor. And the male companion? Xavier Torres, Your Honor, Harold said. He moved in 2 days after Owen Preston's funeral. Judge Chen looked at Xavier, who was shrinking into his seat, then back at Emily. This court finds, first, The revised will of Owen Preston is valid and enforceable. Second, you have no legal claim to the property at 2847 Stradella Road. Third, you are ordered to vacate the premises within 30 days. No, Emily's voice cracked. This isn't fair. He manipulated Owen. Mrs. Preston, control yourself. The evidence is clear. Your husband chose to revise his will. That is his legal right. The will stands. Eviction granted. 30 days. Emily turned to me, her face twisted with rage. You did this. You poisoned him against me. I met her eyes calmly. No, Emily, you manipulated my son. Now comes the reckoning. Judge Chen banged her gavel. Order! This hearing is concluded. Emily collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Collins gathered papers with shaking hands. Xavier looked like he wanted to disappear. Harold and I walked out together. That was beautiful, Harold said quietly. It's not over yet. We still have 30 days. Gordon, she's finished. She knows it now. I thought about Owen's note, about his final wish. Yes, she knows it now. September 15th, 2025, moving day. I arrived at the house, my house, at 9 a.m. Harold was with me. So was the Los Angeles County Sheriff, as required for evictions. The morning was clear and warm, typical Los Angeles September weather. The jacaranda trees lining the street were in full bloom, their purple flowers creating a canopy over the sidewalk. Emily's car was in the driveway. So was a U-Haul truck. At least she was complying. The sheriff knocked. Mrs. Preston? Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We're here to enforce the eviction order. The door opened. Emily stood there, face puffy from crying. She'd aged visibly in the past month. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a plain t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. I need more time. I don't have anywhere to go. The sheriff consulted his paperwork. You've had 30 days, ma'am. The order is effective today. But, ma'am, you can leave voluntarily, or I can remove you. Your choice. Xavier appeared behind her, carrying a box. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Smart man. He knew he was complicit in all of this. Where will you go? I asked Emily. It wasn't kindness. I was genuinely curious what her plan was. I don't know. Her voice was flat, defeated. A hotel, I guess. Until I figure something out. You'll figure it out on $100,000? That should last a few years if you're careful. Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, maybe, or just exhaustion. You enjoy this, don't you? Watching me lose everything. I enjoy justice, Emily. There's a difference. She laughed bitterly. Justice. You call this justice. Taking away my home. Owen's money went where Owen wanted it. This home was never yours, and you stole $450,000 from my dying son. You celebrated his death. You threw me in a basement. I never... Don't lie. Not now. I know everything. The transfers. Xavier. All of it. She deflated. He was dying anyway. Those 4 words. Casual. Cold. That was Emily in her essence. Yes, he was dying. And you made his final months a misery. It took 2 hours to load the U-Haul. The sheriff supervised, making sure nothing that belonged to the house was taken. I stood on the front lawn, watching boxes and furniture disappear into the truck. Finally, Emily came out carrying the last box. Xavier was already in the truck, engine running, ready to leave. She stopped in front of me. For a moment I thought she might apologize, might show some remorse for what she'd done. Instead, she said, I hope you're happy, Gordon. I hope living in this big, empty house alone is worth destroying your son's widow. Owen would have wanted this. That's why he changed his will. He saw through you. He was medicated, confused. You took advantage. He was lucid, evaluated by 2 psychiatrists, and determined to protect me from you. Those are facts, not opinions. Owen would be ashamed of you. That was meant to hurt. It didn't. Owen left me a note, Emily. Want to know what it said? She didn't answer. He said he realized you never loved him. He said you were planning this. He said I deserved his estate more than you did. Those were his words, not mine. Her face crumbled. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion, not anger or calculation, actual grief. Though whether she grieved for Owen or for herself, I couldn't tell. I did love him, she whispered, in my own way. Your way destroyed him. She looked at the house one more time, the house where she'd played queen for 5 weeks. Then she turned to me. I hope you can live with this. and I gave her the answer she deserved. The answer I'd been preparing for weeks. I looked at her with all the coldness I'd been holding back. You chose the basement for me, Emily. The street is your own choice. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she walked to the U-Haul and climbed in. Xavier pulled away without looking back. I watched the truck disappear down Stradella Road, taking Emily out of my life forever. The sheriff handed me the keys. All yours, Mr. Preston. Thank you, officer. Harold and I walked into the house together. It felt strange, walking through rooms I hadn't properly seen in weeks. Emily had redecorated, poorly. Cheap prints on the walls, gaudy furniture. All of that would go. In the living room, Owen's photo still sat on the mantel where I'd placed it months ago. I picked it up. I did it, son. Justice is done. What's next? Harold asked. The Malibu villa. I'm selling it. $8 million to start the Owen Preston Foundation for Cancer Research and Patient Support, and another $10 million from the estate. That's generous, Gordon. Owen would have wanted it. He'd want something good to come from all this pain. And you? What will you do? I looked around. My house. The house I'd given my son, hoping he'd raise a family here. That dream was gone. But I could make new ones. I'm going to live here. Renovate it properly. Maybe actually retire this time. Spend the rest of my days doing what I should have been doing all along. Living. Harold smiled. He'd be proud of you, Gordon. I hope so. Over the next month, I threw myself into action. Sold the Malibu villa for $8.2 million. Established the foundation with detailed bylaws. It would fund both research and provide financial assistance to cancer patients who couldn't afford treatment. Everything Owen had needed. Everything Emily had denied him. I renovated the house, stripping away Emily's changes and restoring it to how it had been when Owen first moved in. Clean, modern, welcoming. And I lived, actually lived, for the first time since losing my son. The wound would never fully heal. Owen's absence was a constant ache, but I'd done what he asked. I'd protected his legacy. I'd ensured justice. Emily had tried to steal everything. Instead, she'd left with the legal minimum and a U-Haul full of regret. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit in my study and pull out Owen's note, read his words, remember his voice, and I'd know I'd done right by him. Justice, in the end, had prevailed. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.